This is BBC One. Now the BBC News with Hugh Edwards. It's 6 o'clock.
America is pounded in the world's biggest terrorist attack. Thousands are feared dead after New York and Washington have been hit. Hijacked planes crash into and destroy the towers of the World Trade Center. The Pentagon is another target. The White House has now been evacuated. Nationwide panic as Americans try to understand the scale of today's events. Good evening. The United States was hit today by the biggest wave of terrorist attacks ever seen. Thousands of people could be dead after several hijacked passenger planes crashed into targets in New York, in Washington, and possibly in Pennsylvania. Today's bewildering event started just 4 hours ago when the twin towers of the World Trade Center were hit by 2 aircraft. Both of the massive towers have now collapsed. The Pentagon in Washington was hit and all major buildings have been evacuated, including the White House. The FBI believes the attacks were all suicide missions and several passenger planes are still unaccounted for. There's no word yet on who might be behind the world's biggest terrorist onslaught. As you can imagine, the chaos there is terrifying. We'll have live reports shortly, but first our correspondent David Loyne on what's happened so far today.
It came out of the clear blue sky on a mild fall morning in Manhattan. At first, no one knew what had happened. Could it have been an accident? Surely nobody would fly into the twin towers of the World Trade Center on purpose. But 8 minutes after those first pictures, the full startling reality of what was going on became clear. In slow motion, you can see a Boeing 767, a passenger plane, crashing into the South Tower. A BBC correspondent, Stephen Evans, was on the ground floor of the World Trade Center when it happened.
I was on the ground floor of the building, sitting in a chair, waiting for somebody to turn up, as you do. There was a huge bang. It felt to me like somebody dropped a skip full of rubbish, a great container full of rubbish from a very great height. At which point, smoke appeared everywhere, as though a mist had suddenly settled on the building. We all screamed out, some people running, some people crying, nobody really screaming. Across the road, and you look up, and you can see the top of one of the towers, smoke billowing out from it.
It is hard to imagine what must have been going through the minds of people on the streets below.
There's people jumping out of windows. I've seen at least 14 people jumping out of windows. It's horrific. I can't believe this is happening.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
President Bush was visiting a school in Florida.
And I've ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
But it wasn't over, not by a long way. Almost as soon as the president had finished speaking, another airliner crashed on or near the Pentagon, the headquarters of the American Defense Department, causing panic in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. The White House was evacuated, and there was what looked like an attack on the State Department, which runs American foreign policy. Back in New York, firefighters were in the basement of the World Trade Center, wondering if the building above them was safe. But the nightmare went on and on. And it was all live on American television. First, one of the towers collapsed.
Thanks very much. Completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about?
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter.
The emergency services had cleared an area around the towers, but they'd not yet succeeded in evacuating the building. The people still inside had seen the other tower go and waved in desperation, but it was too late. And then the World Trade Center, proud symbol that it was of the wealthiest city in the world, was no more.
We're going to be seeing some tape. Jesus!
At that time of the morning, there would have been about 10,000 people in each tower of the World Trade Center and thousands more in the Wall Street financial district around it. The emergency services have been doing what they can all day, but they are overwhelmed by demand in an atmosphere of terror. Every airliner in the air across America was ordered to land at the nearest airport. A plane crashed in Pittsburgh. As smoke blew across Capitol Hill, the heart of American democracy, it is clear that this is the biggest attack on America since Pearl Harbor.
Once again, we see terrorism. We see terrorists, people who don't believe in democracy, people who believe that with the destruction of buildings, with the murder of people, they can somehow achieve a political purpose. They can destroy buildings, they can kill people, and we will be saddened by this tragedy, but they will never be allowed to kill the spirit of democracy. They cannot destroy our society. They cannot destroy our belief in the democratic way.
In a brief break in the day, firefighters could embrace each other, but it will be many hours before their work is done, and many years before the full story of what this day means is told. David Loyne, BBC News.